My colleague Carmen Cota. We will be servicing as interpreters in today's meeting. I will now introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience and review some guidelines. Buenos días, mi nombre es Elsie Duarte y junto con mi colega Carmen Cota estaremos sirviéndoles como intérpretes en la reunión de hoy. Al momento de hacer un comentario público, de favor les pedimos que hable despacio, con claridad y deténgase después de cada pocas oraciones para interpretarle de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There will be a public comment period during item 3 on today's agenda, which will be up to 30 minutes in length. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes to comment. However, prior to the start of the public comment period, I may specify a briefer duration based on the volume of speakers. If you are attending in person and would like to speak, you will need to sign up to speak at the kiosk located at the entrance of council chambers before item 3 begins. For virtual participants, registration to speak must be submitted 2 hours prior to the start of each meeting. Speakers will be called in the order received, beginning with the virtual participants. Our first agenda item will be approval of minutes. We have a motion for approval from Member DeGraw. A second? We have a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. We've been working long and hard on this project. I just want to recognize again staff for all the work you've done, all the committee members, all the work you've done in the community and the participation. And I believe we're getting close to wrapping up our work. So I'm looking forward to today's meeting. And we'll just dive right into it. I'm going to cover a few things right here. During this meeting today, we'll be beginning to discuss relative priorities, public safety, capital needs. Following our last meeting, staff circulated a survey to committee members, and we will be seeing the results of that survey today as a starting point for our deliberations. I want to recognize the committee members and thank you for the ones who participated in that survey. It is important for committee members and the public to understand that the survey results do not represent the committee's final recommendation. I encourage every committee member to be advocates for the projects they feel are important so that we can all make informed decisions. We will continue to receive more input from the public today as well as to help inform the subcommittee's recommendations. And after today's meeting, we'll have one final meeting to complete our work. So with that, our next agenda item is to review the results of the survey and discuss subcommittee recommendations. And I'll hand it over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and good morning to all of the subcommittee members. I am Assistant City Manager Lori Bays. I'll be presenting today along with Deputy Budget and Research Director Chris Fazio, and at the table as well today are our Assistant Police Chiefs and Fire Chiefs Michael Kurtenbach and Scott Walker to answer any questions that you may have following the presentation. So to begin, if staff can pull up the slideshow. So for our agenda today, we will review the charge and responsibilities of the subcommittee. We will also review the identified projects as well as the project ranking results that Chair Berline referenced as part of the survey. And then the subcommittee will have an opportunity to discuss those survey results and prioritization of the projects, as well as ask any questions of staff that you may have. And then we'll talk about next steps and whether or not the subcommittee is ready to make a recommendation to the executive committee today, or if we need to have an additional meeting, which we would have on October 3rd, if that was the case. As a reminder, the charge of the subcommittee is to determine the priority ranking of the projects and programs that have been presented to you either formally or informally via additional public comment. We would also ask that you recommend funding levels for each of the items that you move forward, only referring needs that cannot reasonably be deferred, as we are all well aware that there are more needs than funding potentially available. And just to give you an overview of that, the prioritized capital needs that have been presented across all 8 subcommittees include a total of $647 million worth of projects. The GEO bond program capacity is set at $500 million. So we're starting off with a funding gap already of $147 million, or about 22.7%, and that's without any additional projects that have been added. Reminder, the subcommittee does not have a target dollar amount that it's being asked to move forward. However, just to give you a visual picture of what it would look like if there was a pro rata reduction of that $147 million, there would be approximately $36 million reduced from the Public Safety Committee projects, leaving it at about $122.4 million. So this is just to give you an idea of what that might look like on a pro rata basis. Again, the subcommittees do not have a target. The final amounts are to be established by the executive committee, and the subcommittee may forward as many projects as you deem appropriate to forward to the executive committee. However, overall, there will need to be a reduction made either by the subcommittee or ultimately by the executive committee in the total amount of projects. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Fazio to discuss the ranking process and the results.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. During our last meeting, the subcommittee directed staff to prepare and distribute a survey to subcommittee members. The subcommittee determined it would evaluate all projects identified in the capital needs study. That includes $75 million of prioritized police needs, $83 million of prioritized fire needs, $23 million of police needs that had been identified as future needs, and $63 million of future fire needs. There were no new projects proposed during the subcommittee process, other than those that were identified in the capital needs study. The 15 projects you see here total $244.6 million. As discussed during the last meeting, the results of this survey are not binding. They're only a starting point for discussion. The survey asked members to rank order the identified projects and to flag any projects that members believed would require more or less funding than the capital needs studies figures, and to flag any projects members believed should be deferred to a future bond program. 7 committee members completed the survey. To adjust for outliers, we'll be showing the median order of results, with the average used as a tiebreaker for any project sharing the same median value. Counts will be shown for all remaining questions. With that, I'll go over the results. To orient you to this table, on the far left side, you're seeing the overall rank based on the survey, followed by the project name, the median rank, the high rank, low rank, and the average. So you have in order fire stations 7, 13, and 15, Cactus Park Precinct, Fire Station 51, Police Property Management Warehouse, Fire Station 70, Maryvale Precinct, Fire Stations 74 and 20, Police Driver Training Track Phase 1, Police Precinct renovations, Fire Station 77, Police Academy renovations, and Phase 2 of the Police Driver Training Track. We can come back to this table if needed, but I'll now show that same rank order with financial information. So you're now looking at overall survey rank, followed by project name, followed by the bond funded amount, counts of members who believed the project would require more or less funding than what was identified, committee members who believed the project should not be funded in this bond program, and then finally a running total of what that would look like based on where the committee decides, what projects the committee decides to send forward to the executive committee. Again, the prioritized needs identified in the capital needs study were $158 million. So just as an illustrative example, if the executive committee ultimately recommended a funding level similar to the prioritized needs, that line would be drawn roughly at project number 7, Fire Station 70. With that, we can take any of your questions regarding the administration of the survey, but we'd recommend that you take public comment before proceeding to actual deliberations and decision making.
Thank you. With that, we will turn to public comment. Can we wait till public comment? Because we'll just cover it all. Thank you. All right. We will now open our public comment period regarding this item. We have several speakers today, virtual and here. We will give each speaker 2 minutes. Start with virtual participants. When your name is called, your audio device will be unmuted, and you may begin your remarks. At the conclusion of the virtual speakers, we will invite in-person attendees to the podium to address the committee. I will now ask the city attorney to explain the rule of public comment in GO Bond Committee meetings.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the public may speak to comment on the General Obligation Bond Program. The City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, committee members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose the opportunity to continue to speak. The committee and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending claims or litigation.
Thank you. Call the speakers.
Good morning. Our first virtual speaker will be Benjamin Lozano, followed by Valerie Turley. Benjamin, are you on the line? Okay, Benjamin is not with us this morning. Valerie Turley will be the speaker, followed by Daryl Kriplin. Valerie, are you on the line? All right, no Valerie. After Daryl will be Dan Penton. Daryl Kriplin, are you on the line?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, members of the subcommittee. My name is Daryl Kriplin. I serve as the president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association that represents approximately 2,200 police officers and detectives for the city of Phoenix. The facilities identified by the police department represent the facilities that need the most attention. For years, renovations have been deferred, and in some cases to the point well beyond where they should have been. One example is the Maryville Precinct Station on Encanto. The air conditioning system that provides cool air to the prisoner holding area is out, and the Band-Aid fix that has been in place for at least 2 months has been portable air conditioner that has external ductwork running through the officer work area to the prisoner holding area. This creates a huge risk for the officers and civilian staff that work in that precinct. These prisoners have a direct access to the interior of the precinct station. These working conditions and the facilities identified in this report are unacceptable. These facilities were put into service more than 30 to 40 years ago, and in some cases, in the case of the Northern Command Station, more than 50 years ago. They were not designed to handle the number of staff that is required by today's standards, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Deferring crucial maintenance has not helped from keeping these buildings from deteriorating. One simply needs to look at the facility condition indexes to truly understand the state of these facilities. According to the International Facility Management Association, FCI percentages are broken down by the following. 0 to 5% is considered good, 5 to 10% is fair, 10 to 30% is poor, 10 to 30% is poor. Oh, I said that. And anything greater than 30% is critical. The benefits garnered by addressing these issues are numerous. For example, they would extend the life of critical equipment and building systems. Renovated precincts would be more inviting and allow better access to community. It would ensure continuity of service by reducing the potential for failure of equipment and or building systems, and it would modernize and improve police operations for officers, staff, and community. I would encourage this community to advance the items identified by Chief Cartback and prioritize them as critically needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first speaker, Benjamin Lozano, is on the line, so we will take him next and followed by Dan Penton. Benjamin, are you on the line? Benjamin, can you hear us? Benjamin, we will come back to you. We're having technical difficulties. Dan Penton, are you on the line? All right, Dan Penton. Our next speaker will be Ben Lushner. Ben, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Ben Leuschner, and I'm the president of the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association. We represent the supervisors of the Phoenix Police Department. I first want to thank all of you for your dedication to the residents of Phoenix by serving on this committee and doing your utmost to get Phoenix residents the best public safety services. All of the proposals in front of you have merit, so all I want to do is add more perspective to the need for the listed police department infrastructure. I'd like to give some context for the need for the rebuild of the Cactus Park Precinct and Northern Command Station. Anyone who has stepped foot in one of these stations immediately feels like they have gone back in a time machine. I worked for many years at the Cactus Park Precinct, and even when I was there 12 years ago, the city was trying to replace it due to ever-increasing repair and maintenance costs. This is money that can be used for vital city services. Instead, we have to spend them on maintaining an old ship. As you may recall, there was a plan by the city about 10 years ago to move Cactus Park to the old Game and Fish building at I-17 and Greenway, but due to the Great Recession, that plan was scrapped and the city sold the site, leaving us even worse off. That leads us to today, where we continue to spend large amounts of money on a building where the air conditioning systems are in continual disrepair, roots infect the plumbing system, and the roof has been repatched for leaks countless times. Police stations need to handle a large amount of daily traffic covering 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. The Cactus Park Station has been overcrowded for years, with officers not getting lockers and limited space for parking. Workspace is limited, which means the report officers need to write, evidence that needs to be impounded, and prisoners that need to be processed are all under strain. Again, I appreciate your service to the residents of Phoenix and everything you are doing to help us out. It is commendable. We all need to work together to build up our public safety infrastructure. So I fully support the fire department's proposed improvements, especially the plan for building Fire Station 30 at the site of the hopefully old Cactus Park Station. I ask that you please also recommend the police department request for our infrastructure needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ben. We're going to try Benjamin one more time, followed by Tim Knob in the upper council chambers. Benjamin, are you on the line?
California, where I just got my car a few days ago.
Right.
And it's on Florida paperwork.
So is that something probably with Department of Public Safety?
Benjamin?
Address?
Maybe. And so I was wondering if our security officers here.
Yes, we can hear you.
That lies under Department of Public Transportation or Public Safety.
Okay.
The DPS probably be the best.
Benjamin, do you hear us?
Or inspection or something like that, because it's a transfer from state to state kind of thing.
Possibly,
Yeah. So I mean, rather than go in circles this way and that way and go to,
Sure.
I mean, it might be a good idea to contact DPS, even on the.
Benjamin, we will return to you. Our first in-person speaker is Tim Knob in the upper council chambers.
Committee Chair Berline, committee members, thank you. My name is Tim Kenobi. I am a captain with the Phoenix Fire Department. I represent our members for the United Phoenix Firefighters, and most importantly, I'm a resident of the city of Phoenix in Council District 3 with my wife and 3 kids. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work and consideration on all these important matters. I understand there's lots of needs. I grew up as a lifeguard for the city of Phoenix, teaching swim lessons. My kids still take swim lessons in that same pool, and aquatics has a special place in my heart. But I'm here to ask that the committee prioritize the fire department projects. All 8 projects are critical to reducing response times in the city, which are at nearing 9-minute average across the city. The safety of our public is in danger. if this crisis isn't addressed. So I ask that you please prioritize all the asks for the fire department. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Benjamin Lozano. Ben, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes, sir. My name is Benjamin Lozano. I live in the Sunny Slope area of Phoenix, and I wanted to ask that they advance the bond measure for the police department, as our neighborhood is crime rate is increasing dramatically, and I do see the police department and my children see the police officers in and throughout the community, and anything to assist them in their job overall would be welcome by our community.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is our last speaker.
Okay, so this concludes our public comment period. I want to thank everybody who participated, and now we'll be opening up the meeting to subcommittee members. I want to recognize our subcommittee members, Washington, Valenzuela, Knight, and Williams, who are virtual attendees. With that.
So I have a question, of course. I was a little surprised that the police department needs fell as low as they did, and I'm mostly concerned about Maryville Precinct, because I did go out there and tour that. Everything that Mr. Kriplian said, and I forget the other gentleman's name, is true. There's that safety issue out there. While I was standing there with that door open, there's 2 officers behind me with bags of fentanyl, guns. It's really dangerous for them. And I'd like to understand how that can either get advanced up in this, or what we can do today. I mean, their needs are obviously today, to make sure that, that we, all of these, the first concern we have for all of it is safety of the public and obviously of the first responders. So I'd like to know what possibility exists to escalate projects like that.
Mr. Chair, committee members, so we're prepared with a spreadsheet to keep track of motions as you proceed with deliberations. A motion to adjust orders would certainly be allowable. This, again, is just a starting point for discussion. The other comment I would have, and perhaps staff could respond to, is the concerns that you had at Maryville Precinct, whether this particular project would address those particular concerns, or if this is a smaller in scope item that may be helpful for the committee to understand as it deliberates.
Any other board members?
Mr. Chair, if I may just quickly respond to that. Essentially, the issue is the condition of the air conditioning unit. So there could be an opportunity to replace the air conditioning in the existing facility. That has been something that has been deferred at this point, but could be conducted as an independent project. If that helps for Subcommittee Ender's question.
I'm sorry, I don't know if this is the correct time for this or not, but I would like to consider making a motion so that we can talk about the issues of adding additional projects. There is the survey rank that was presented to us, has 15 items on it. I would like to recommend, and I'll explain why in a moment, that this committee suggest, request, recommend, I'm not sure what the right word is, the first 10 projects on here. That would be down to Fire Station 20. That is more than had been recommended by staff, but the reasons are pretty simple. Over the past decade, as one of our speakers mentioned, response times have grown to 8 and 9 minutes for fire. And with those response times, that is unacceptable in a city our size. And we are growing. With those response times, seniors that have heart attacks and children that are in pools will die. There's no question about it. They will die because every firefighter knows, and most police know as well, that when you have a heart attack, if you're without oxygen for 4 or 5 minutes, you're going to die, or you're going to be a vegetable the rest of your life. And those response times need to be brought down. Now, I know that there are studies going on that will most likely show that it costs the city a lot of money, and it costs taxpayers a lot of money when response times are so high because of physical issues that occur, because of the hospital can't deal with the person until they've already been under for 8, 9, or 10 minutes. And that is unfair to both our police and our firefighters, because while the people are injured by those response times, our firefighters and police are also injured by having to see that they could have helped had they gotten there earlier. They could have saved a life. They could have saved major physical disabilities. I believe that the city needs to reconsider the $500 million cap, if that's what that is, or maybe it's just a suggestion, because the response times in Phoenix are not acceptable, either for police or for fire. And I recommend that this committee ask the larger committee to include the top 10 items on this survey ranking. And just so we're clear, that includes Fire Station 7, Fire Station 13, Fire Station 15, the Cactus Park Precinct and Northern Command Center, which is a very large project, Fire Station 51, the Police Property Management Warehouse, Fire Station 70, the Maryvale Precinct redo, Fire Station 74, and Fire Station 20. We are going to continue to grow. We cannot wait another 5 or 10 years to build some of these stations. Response times will become absolutely out of control. And if we really care about the citizens of our city, we need to provide them with response times that are reasonable for both police and fire. We need to provide police with the protection of even something as simple as air conditioning. We need to provide fire with the ability to respond faster. They need more trucks. They need more stations. It is not a question of whether this would be nice. This is a question of life and death. This is a question of the safety of our officers, both police and fire. This is a question of the future of our city. We continue to grow. We continue to add new developments, to approve new zoning, to bring in more people, to concentrate people in higher levels all along the rail routes which we are expanding. If we do not consider the safety of our citizens, we are failing as a city. I make the motion that this committee recommend at least the top 10 items in this survey ranking for funding in this bond go-round.
This is Felder, and I second it.
Mr. Chair, if I may confirm, is the motion to move forward to the top 10 items in the priority order that's being displayed now, or is the committee wishing to deliberate on the relative priority order additionally?
I believe the top 10 items are what we should be doing. I would gladly receive discussion on where they should be prioritized. If it were up to me, I would add in more. But I believe that at least the top 10, that's $190 million in bond funding for police and fire, is the least the city should be doing.
Mr. Chair, Committee Member DeGraw, the reason for my question is once this committee advances its recommendations to the Executive Committee and the Executive Committee determines relative funding levels for each subcommittee, ensuring the Executive Committee has the rank-ordered priority of the subcommittee will be important.
Well, I understand that the Executive Committee will make the final decision. I don't know that I have enough information to argue whether or not Station 15 should be in front of Station 13 or Station 7 should be number 2 or 3. I just believe that when you read through what these recommendations are and what they will include in the terms of trucks and locations, and you look at what the police department also needs when they outline their needs, even for like the management warehouse, which sounds boring, but is an incredibly important part of our justice system. And you look at the need for Cactus Park Precinct and the whole Northern Command Center, which is a very large piece of this request, that is extremely important to response times and the safety of our citizens. So I guess we can argue about what the ranking is between 1 and 10, but I don't know how we make those decisions.
I think for clarification on the motion that we're going to be discussing, we need to decide exactly. And the way I hear your motion is you're recommending we put forward items 1 through 10, and my feeling is this list of priorities really is coming from the leadership of our police department and fire departments, and I have the utmost confidence in their abilities to prioritize the projects.
And I would trust their judgment as well.
Okay. Is that clear, Mr. Fazio?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
The motion? Okay. So with that, just for clarification so we have a motion from Member DeGraw and a second from Nethelda? Nethelda second?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's that we move forward projects 1 through 10 in that order, and with that we'll open up for discussion.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just add one more point of consideration as you deliberate. It is important to remember that the operating and maintenance costs for each of these projects is not included in the general obligation bond funding. So that funding will have to be identified through other sources in the city budget, as well as just the practical consideration of the number of projects that can be completed in approximately about a 5-year time frame. It is not part of what we're used to, since it has been such a long time since we've had a GO bond program, but we do anticipate to have another program in approximately 5 to 7 years, and so it will be important for us to be able to complete these projects and be prepared for another round of projects in that time frame. So just points for your consideration as you deliberate.
Mr. Chairman, to that, I was involved in the previous bond, City of Phoenix, and that bond went on for a number of years, well past 5 years. And no offense to the City of Phoenix, but I'm not sure in 5 years they're going to go out for another bond. It might be 10 years before they go out for another bond. And leaving these projects go longer than that is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable for the City of Phoenix and for the citizens of Phoenix.
I have a question or a comment. So what I'm struggling with is how response times for the fire department equate to how the response times for the police department. In the police department, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Kurtenbach, those response times, probably 80% of that is due to shortage of police officers?
Mr. Chairman, Member Ender, it's fair to say that the shortage of police officers is impacting our response times. There's no argument there.
So that's what I'm trying to, when I look at the rankings, we're looking at kind of apples and oranges. The response times for the fire department are more because they don't have the equipment or the facilities to have that equipment. When I look at the police department capital needs, each one of these, when they are brought back up to the levels that they should be, the police academy renovation, the driving track, those things, in my mind, help to recruit more officers. And that's where I'm kind of struggling with the comparisons, because I'm not sure that they are the same. Property management warehouse, I mean, that has to be repaired because you've got evidence in there, so that would speed up investigations, I would imagine. So those are just my thoughts about it.
Mr. Chairman, Committee Member Enders, I couldn't agree more. And I do believe that the driving training facilities, for instance, will assist police in a whole variety of things, including personal safety. However, while I'd like to fund all 15, I know that cannot happen. My hope is that by funding the first 10, or at least recommending that we fund the first 10, we can assist police, especially in the Northern Command Center and that area, and with other issues that the police feel are absolutely necessary for them. I'd like to fund it all. I just know that we can't. And so I tried to at least reach some level of compromise in only going for 10 of the 15.
Chairman, if I may, we're catching up for years and years of, we're behind. This is what we're moving ahead with. I think we need to look at the top 10 like you suggested and make up for what we haven't done for the last, 10 years, 15 years since the last GO bond. And then hope in the future the next round of bond comes. But I think we've got to catch up. So maybe the proposal that comes out of this is we increase the total request from 500 million to something more, so that we get adequate support out there to everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Board Member Williams.
I want to put in a plug for the Cactus Park precinct. It has been too small for too long, and it is actually dangerous to go in and out of there. It is overcrowded, and what I think we need to keep in mind is we have that new mega factory, the chip factory that's going in, and there's going to be over 2,000 homes already zoned to go out in that area. That means Cactus Park has increased service deliveries that need to be made in a critical fashion, and I don't want to put this any lower. I feel very strongly we need to address the problem that they have there, the space or lack thereof, and that it is important to not only look at today, but not forget tomorrow, because that's a year away. And I think it's very important that we consider the police response times. Even though they're out patrolling, there's still additional needs for a precinct, and it's very important that we keep it high on the list. I believe those fire stations are so bad. I remember having private conversations with the former chief about what's not in those, and that they can't get even equipment into some of them. It's just deplorable, and I think the response time for fire is critical too. So I really support doing the 10. I'm making the assumption that the rest of the list would be on the next bond committee, at least on the next bond committee, with additions. But I think it's important those 10 are extremely known for their lack of service, their deplorable employee conditions, and I think it makes it dangerous for not only our employees, but for the citizens of Phoenix. So I really strongly support 10. Now, I may argue which rank they're in, but I support those 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Williams. And I would like to just ask Committee Member Washington if you have any comments.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. First and foremost, I will be supporting the recommendation or the that Member DeGraw had issued. But I also want to point out too, as a cautionary note, what we're focused on with this committee is the capital needs. We are not addressing the operational needs. That's something that obviously the mayor and council, along with recommendations from city management, will deal with on an annual basis. But I do recall in previous bonds, it's one thing to build a structure, it's another thing to make sure it's staffed appropriately. And the issues with the submittals that we have today, we want to make sure that not only are these fire stations, for example, and a renovated Cactus Precinct, that those are built, but we want to make sure that it is also staffed appropriately to be able to achieve the desired results that we're hoping to realize. So again, we're limited in scope of what we can do today as relates to the operational side, but whatever we recommend, we'll be sending a strong message that we definitely want to make sure that the operation needs for these facilities are going to be appropriately addressed. As it relates to the overall size of the bond program, the recommended approach was to come up with a plan of $500 million, and hopefully you'll go on the regular cycle, so you don't have to wait another 14, 15, or more years between bond proposals. Because what happens, the city continues to try to play catch up, and you never quite get there. There has to be a way to hopefully address these needs on a much more consistent basis. As far as sizing is concerned, there was a proposal that was submitted, or at least a recommendation in the House of Representatives back in June of 21. It was called the Fire Station Construction Grant Act, and that was introduced to try to fund primarily in smaller communities, but it would address issues of fire station construction. Now that predated the infrastructure bill, and so my question for staff, and this is probably more germane for the work of the executive committee, are there any opportunities in the infrastructure bill that was passed late last year, as well as the recent Inflation Reduction Act that was signed into law about a month or two ago? Are there any opportunities in those particular pieces of legislation where certain capital needs that may be highlighted in one or more of the committees, not just public safety, but any of the other bond committees that's being deliberated? Are any of those particular projects potentially eligible for some of those monies? And the reason why I pose that question, if there's a way to address some of those particular needs, that could possibly, theoretically, free up additional monies that could go to address some of our critical needs in the public safety side. So you wouldn't necessarily have to look at expanding the bond program beyond 500 million, possibly, if there's other ways to address funding for some of those other critical needs too. So even without that, I would still support the recommendation that's been put on the table. But I also want to make sure that we're exploring every avenue possible to address critical infrastructure needs of the city, whether it's through our bond program or other fund sources. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to respond to Member Washington's questions and comments, there is a potential opportunity for us to receive some federal funding. Approximately $5 million is what we think may be approved. but that has not yet been finalized, and so it is not guaranteed, but there is a potential for that funding to be applied to Fire Station 51, which would be the fifth item in the ranking.
Thank you.
However, that funding is already accounted for in the cost estimate, so it wouldn't really be saving much off of, it wouldn't be saving any off of this total. However, we're still pursuing that, and it hasn't been guaranteed at this point.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Subcommittee Member Knight, do you have a comment?
Mr. Chair, I support the recommendation provided by Mr. DeGraw. Certainly in looking at this list of areas to be covered, you have communities that have been without what I feel adequate services, and they continue to grow. Specifically 44th Street and Thomas, the community is inundated, the whole area, with small and mid businesses, corporations, new apartments that are coming up on a quarterly basis. It's becoming a highly dense area, private and public schools, senior population. So all of these particular areas here that are listed in the top 10 represent those populations that, without someone continuing to advocate for public services, adequate public services in their particular areas, it does not happen. So I am very, very supportive of this recommendation from Mr. DeGraw for us to move forward on.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to respond to Member Knight. If you look at the overhead pictures of the areas that you're talking about, and 44th Street and Thomas is an excellent example, you'll see over the last 10 years, the density in those areas has increased dramatically. And you'll find that, all you have to do is drive around the city and look at the number of apartment complexes that are being built. And these are not apartment complexes with 15 and 20 units. These are apartment complexes with 800 and 1,000 units. And as that density goes up, it means the demands on both police and fire in those areas goes up dramatically. It's not just like we are growing by adding some houses on the outside of the city. We are growing into a much more dense city, requiring a lot more support and a lot quicker response times to difficult areas that are dense. And it's extremely important that we keep paying attention to that. And the city council is approving these constructions. So it's not like it's a surprise that this is happening. It's not like nobody knew about it, because it takes several years to get through all the processes. So the city knows what it's doing, and it needs to respond and provide police and fire support. Thank you.
Thank you. Subcommittee Member Valenzuela, do you have a comment?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, this is an exciting time for our city, and I also support Board Member DeGraw's motion. Governing is hard work. It's about problem solving, and it would be nice to say that, as Mr. DeGraw put it, I want all 15 of these items. Would make our jobs a lot easier, but the fact is, I think each of us who've been committed to this community, we can come up with an additional 15 items. And I think everyone would agree. So moving on with the top 10, I think is a good way to do this. And that is also a hard decision when you look at other things that are on the list. In that remaining 5, I think it is important to realize that a couple of things, that this is a 5-year bond election, but I'm glad Mr. DeGraw brought up how long it's been since we've had one of these bond elections. And now this creates a tough decision for the larger group, the general group, and that's okay. We all know those folks, and They're all problem solvers as well. The city needs a lot of things, right? The other committees are working on streets and storm drainage and parks and recs, neighborhood and city services, housing and human services, environmental sustainability, arts, culture and education, and economic development. If we want a thriving economy, which in turn will add to our tax base, which will help us create, all of these services or add to these services, add to our services, it all starts with keeping people safe, which is the number one priority of any government. If we want this, exciting atmosphere around the arts and culture and education, again, that starts with keeping people safe. And I think it's an important motion, and it's an important not just statement, but followed by action to show the people of our community that their safety is priority. And frankly, it's also very, very important to show the people who are providing and fighting for that safety, our first responders, to let them know that their safety is paramount. And so that said, I certainly appreciate the motion that was made, and I absolutely support it.
Thank you.
So is there any way to increase the amount of the bond for this? And then I have a comment.
Thank you for that question, Committee Member Ender and committee members. The bond amount has been set based on the threshold at which we can maintain the tax rate without increasing it, and therefore doing so would be a decision that the City Council would have to make to increase that amount, which would essentially anticipate a tax increase going forward at some point. So that is the reason for the threshold being set what it is, and it would be a challenge to change that, and so that is the number that we are working within.
So I'm just going to end with a comment, because I'm not going to vote in favor of the motion, which I'm probably the odd man out, but Cactus Park and Maryvale Precinct we saw early on have the highest crime rates in the city. Maryvale has the highest homicide rates. Police driver training track is so critical. We look at the amount of traffic fatalities we have today, and the first one that comes to mind is Officer New, and now that was not a result of him not knowing how to drive. Those things are so critical in my mind to the operations of the police department that I think they need to be left in this list, and I will be voting against the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I accept the response from Staff Person Bays that the council would have to do something. The fact of the matter is that raising taxes isn't a popular issue, but there have been issues on the ballot in the past with a 1/10% sales tax increase for public safety here or there that have always been supported by the public at large. The City Council could do something, and I believe should do something, to be able to increase the size of the bond so that people are not punished because the city is growing and the city has more needs. And I don't believe the public would be opposed to that, especially if it is related specifically to public safety. The public generally supports, in fact strongly supports, the police department and the fire department. And while there may be issues that money should be used here or money should be used there, that support has been pretty specific and pretty strong over the 55 years I've spent in the city of Phoenix. And I think it would also be there if the council were willing to take the approach to increase that $500 million bond level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'm just going to make a comment. Recently retired from the fire department just in June, and I can't say enough about the Phoenix Police Department, the leadership, the women and men who protect us, and the firefighters, the fire department, from the women and men in the fire stations, and the work they do to protect the communities, to protect all of us, and the risks they take. What we see on the news is just a small part of it. We used to kind of joke about what happens while everybody's sleeping, while the community's sleeping. They have no idea of the great work that goes on, and it's taxing. It's mentally taxing. It's physically taxing on everybody involved in public safety. And so when I see this list, I just wish we could do so much more. But I also know our mayor, our council, our city manager, staff, everybody would like to do more. So this motion puts forward a challenge. I think challenges are good for leadership, and I have the utmost confidence, the leadership of this city, to do what's best for the entire community and for police and fire. With that, I'll be supporting the motion. And Mr. Fazio, if you would please repeat the motion and then call the roll.
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, the motion is to recommend to the Executive Committee items 1 through 10 as displayed on your screens in the order presented.
Thank you. If you could roll call the vote, please.
Committee Member Knight.
Aye.
Committee Member Valenzuela.
Aye.
Committee Member Washington.
Aye.
Committee Member Williams.
Aye.
Committee Member Jackson.
Aye.
Committee Member DeGraw.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ender.
Nay.
Chair Bryan.
Aye.
The motion passes on a 7-1 vote.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. When we make this recommendation to the Executive Committee, when the Executive Committee meets, may we as subcommittee members address the Executive Committee?
Committee Member DeGraw, my understanding is that Mr. Berline will be representing the subcommittee at the Executive Committee and will be conveying the wishes of the subcommittee to the committee itself. I'm not entirely sure, and we can ask our city attorney if the subcommittee members may attend and provide public comment. Yes, they may.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Certainly you can still attend and submit comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Staff, did you have anything else? All right. With that, our next and final meeting is scheduled for October 3rd, correct?
Mr. Chair, that meeting could be held or not held at your discretion. As I understand it, we have a recommendation to Executive Committee.
Oh, okay. Then our work is done for now. And before I close this meeting, I want to recognize our Chiefs Kirkenbach and Walker for being here for us. We really appreciate you. We have the fire chief is here today and his executive assistant and I'm sorry, here also. We appreciate all you entire staff. Thank you for the work you've done for the community. Thank you for your support. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes,
I'd
please.
also like to take this opportunity to thank each of the subcommittee members. You have provided a tremendous amount of insight, and I appreciate each of you taking the time to review all of the recommendations and to provide this public service. It's not something that you have to do, it's something that you chose to do, and we truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Bass.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second. And second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
all of Arizona. It is always better to be prepared, and today we come together to celebrate an innovative new model for training. According to the FBI, there were 61 active shooter incidents in 2021, which was an over 50% increase from the year before. Active shooter incidents are a reality that we face. As we go back to school, we want to make sure that our teachers, our school employees have the tools that they need